Hi, this is Katia from the Keystone chapter, and you're listening to White Keys Connect.
Hey there, PA Federationists. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I am the treasurer of the Keystone chapter. Joining me today, as always, is Keystone chapter's second vice president and co-host, Lisa Bryant. Lisa, how are you today?
I am doing well, David, and had a wonderful show, I think, ahead. Katia Hadjeb-Rahman is fairly new to the chapter, but she's now president of the Guide Dog Users Division, and she has a lot of fire in her, as people will hear.
Yeah, it's really great to have someone, A, that has the passion for the job, and B, in Katia's case, is younger, so that gives her a longer chance to keep going with it into the future. And it's great to talk to her. She's also a member of the Keystone chapter. You'll hear in the interview of a lady that we talk about. That lady is my wife, who ran into her or approached her, I guess, in the parking lot of PetSmart in Brookhaven, Delaware County.
I did not know that. I did not know that. That is wonderful.
So it's kind of funny, that whole story. But let's listen to what Katia has to say about the guide dog users. Katia, thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Katia, thank you. We know you as a new mom have a lot on your plate, so thanks for carving out some time to talk with us. We have actually quite a bit to go over. You're relatively new to the chapter. You've just been elected as the president of the Guide Dog Division. But before we go into all of that, just give us a little brief background on you and how you in particular came to NFB.
I am a new mom of an almost 4-month-old little
girl.
She's such a sweetie. But it's tiring to be a new mom.
Yeah.
As probably many new parents know. I graduated from Widener University with a bachelor's in political science and international relations and French. That's a mouthful. And that was in 2021. So that's, I guess, my academic background. How I came to the NFB, yeah, that's pretty interesting. Actually, I got connected with the NFB back when I was in high school. I didn't say that before, but I live in Philadelphia, so I went to Science Leadership Academy High School here in Philadelphia. So when I was in high school, I think maybe my junior year, I was working on a project or getting ready to work on my Keystone project for my senior year. And so I decided to get in touch with some type of organization for the blind because my project was kind of sort of related to disability and blindness, so on and so forth.
I'm sorry, Katia, what kind of project? What did you call it? What was the name of the project?
It was basically, I was starting to write a novel. It was called The Tears of Humanity. And the other part of the project was I was trying to put a poetry talent show or some sort of like show with people, blind students, because at that time I was part of a poetry club, and I used to do like spoken word and stuff. So I got connected with the Keystone chapter, and back at that time, I was kind of like not really involved in the blind community. I didn't really know anybody who was blind, and all that, except for myself. So I came to one of the meetings, and I kind of like briefly mentioned about my project. I didn't really, press it. I guess I didn't emphasize it or anything. I was just like, "Hi, my name is Katia, and I'm doing this." And it's kind of like not really important. So yeah, so then we didn't really go anywhere from there. Like I didn't, I guess, really involve the NFB in my project or anything like that. Because I wasn't really assertive or anything like that. I was very just like in the corner. That's how it started, and Jim was the president, I believe, back at that.
And we should say, so you're what, maybe 17 at the time, something like that, and you hadn't been that long in the States, correct?
Yeah, so I've been probably like 2 years, 2 years and a half in the States.
Originally from where?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Algeria, but I don't really like to say I'm originally from Algeria. Like when people ask me, I just say like, "Oh, my family is from Algeria." But that goes into just a whole other thing of like identity stuff, I guess.
Okay. Okay.
That could be another episode if you want, or if you want to go into that. But it's kind of complicated. But I'm sure a lot of immigrants, or I guess like young immigrants, could probably relate to that. So yeah, so I've been in the States for probably 2 years, 2 years and a half. I was working on this project. I connected with the NFB. I don't really remember how. Like, I don't remember how I like found out about the Keystone chapter or anything. I probably called or something. I don't really remember. So yeah, I ended up in the meeting. And so that happened, and then I didn't really come back to the meetings after that, really, because I was just like going about my life. I was like, forget about this blindness thing. I was like, I didn't really see it as like beneficial to be involved in the blind community, which I was very, very wrong about, because it honestly just came from a place of perhaps, I don't know, insecurity, or just...
It sounds like it might have been another identity issue, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, not so much of an issue. It's just like it was like too much to figure out at that time, that I just wanted to like fit in and kind of just like figure my stuff out, because as a new immigrant, I had to figure out like my language issues, and then like I was also blind, and blah blah blah. I guess I just wanted to do whatever necessary so that I moved on in the high school, like, you know what I mean? Like, not like really stand out more than I'm already standing out. So at that point, like, I didn't even like use a white cane or anything, but that's a whole other thing, because I never really used a white cane like back when I was in Algeria, but that's a lack of resources issue. So then I went on to college. Like I said, I went to Wider University, and I pursued my bachelor's degree, and all that. And again, my junior year of college, I see kind of a pattern.
Yeah.
I think I kind of like need a community. I really need to, connect with other blind people. I felt very isolated, very lonely in my fight, because I found myself fighting the same fight over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's whenever I talk to people, they're just like, yeah, that must be really hard, huh? Like, okay. It's very hard for people to relate to your struggles, and how something that could seem very simple is, very serious. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for example, when I talk to some people about like Uber denials, right, as a service dog user, like, yeah, that must be really tough, huh? That sucks. And then they go, well, yeah, but it's kind of like their private car, so they have like the right to do that. And sometimes like, why don't you just use Uber Pets? Like, you don't get the point. So yeah, that kind of stuff. Or like, I don't know. I get really annoyed, for example, when people try to just like take you from the arm, I don't know, direct you however they will, however they want. And when I tell like my sighted friends or peers or even like family members sometimes that they don't get it. Like they don't understand like why it's so annoying no matter how much I explain it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so that kind of stuff. So that's from like a personal point of view. I really needed a community where I felt comfortable, also where I didn't feel judged. Not judged as like a person, but I felt as though like at that point in my life, I felt as though like everything I did that like people really liked. They're like, oh yeah, that's awesome, blah blah blah. But if I failed, even like if it's like a minor thing or if it's something that anyone could, you know, make a certain mistake or fail in a certain way or whatever, people would automatically relate it to my blindness, and that's not fair.
Mhm.
Like you know, I didn't. So, for example, hypothetically, if like I don't know, I didn't do so well in a test or whatever, like at school, it's not because I'm blind. Like I don't understand why people relate failure to disability automatically when it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with that. So I at that point, like I gone through so much of that, that like, and not just academically, right? Academically, I did great. It's just like in my life in general, it's like I felt this pressure of like, oh my gosh, I have to be exemplary everywhere I go in everything I do because I can't fail, because if I do, then you know people are just gonna think, oh, this blind person is no good. You know what I'm saying? And then it
Yeah.
automatically, I guess, makes everything good that I do like not matter anymore, because that's just the one thing people see. So I really needed a community where I didn't feel that, where you know people wouldn't just like, if I suck at something, I suck at something. You can say
Right.
that, but it's
Right.
you say like, oh, you suck because you're blind, so you know you must suck. Um. So yeah. So that's, like I said, from a personal point of view, but also from academically speaking. At that point, I was kind of going through a transition in what I wanted to pursue, kind
Mhm.
of. Because prior to that, I was very much focused on things like conflict resolution, war and peace, things like that, that are more related to the international relations side of things, that I was studying, right? Um, at that point, though, like in my junior year, I was like, I think that might not really be what I want to do. Like, I don't want to spend my entire life doing research about what causes war, or, you know,
Mhm.
why is there war in some countries while there isn't in other countries, even though they might be dealing about the same issues, and topics like that. And I'm still interested in that kind of thing, though. Like, I'm still interested in those subjects and topics, but it just didn't seem like what I wanted to do as a career.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know how, but somehow I was like, what I really want to do is advocate for disability rights. um, and that's because, like I said, I found myself fighting the same fight over and over again. So like Uber denials or a
Mhm.
lack of access in academics, right? That was always an issue. I'm like, why do I always have to remind, like, you know, people or my professors, or like, why do I always have to actually fight for me to get the same information that everybody else is getting? You
Mhm.
know, like, didn't I just like have this conversation like last week with with that other professor? Like, why do I have to have it again and again and again and again? Um, you know, so yeah, that was that. So then it just kind of like stuck in my mind. It was like, well, I wonder how many people are going through the same thing. And
So how did that lead you to reconnect with NFB?
right, so then I was just trying to, like I said, build a community and also network, right? Because from an academic point of view or career, I guess career wise, um, my network before that I was working on was focused on whatever I was focused on, which is, like I said, like things like conflict resolution and stuff like that. So I've connected with different like professors and different professionals in the field. And now I'm interested in a completely different thing and I know nobody.
Right,
So
right.
I was like, well, what better, where else would I find these people? Well, I guess an organization focuses
Uh-huh.
on advocating for, blind people.
And you had
Um,
already been to a meeting, so you already
yeah.
knew Jim Antonacci. So was it a matter of picking up the phone again and say, "Hey, when's your next meeting? I'd love to come back."
Well, and I already knew Harriet, I think, too.
Okay. Okay.
Well, it wasn't exactly like that, but kind of like that.
Was when you met that lady in the parking lot and she gave you a card?
Yeah, that too. It was like a series of things. So yeah, funny story. I went to PetSmart to take my guide dog, I think to the groomer or something. And this lady just like walks up to me and she's like, "Oh, my name is so and so, and my husband is blind, and like here's his email, and you know."
Oh, that's a riot. That's a riot. I didn't know that story. That's really funny.
Yeah. So it was actually she came in a really, really good time. And then I also connected with, so my mom works with this lady, right? And her brother happens to be blind and she's always telling me about him. But she's like, well, she's always telling me about like how he uses technology and blah 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 blah. Because what better to do at work than talk about two blind people. So anyway, eventually I connected with this guy and he was like, "Oh yeah, I think you should really go back to, the NFB or whatever." I was like, "All right, whatever, I'll give it a go." So I contacted Harriet. I was like, "I'm really interested in getting more involved and da da da." And she's like, "Well, our next meeting is this time, this date, And I was like, "Okay." And I think at that time, I didn't come to that meeting specifically that she told me about, but then eventually I did.
Okay.
And then yeah, and then here I am.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yep.
So moving a little more up to date, this year, this past month, you attended your first convention, your first state convention.
Yes, I did.
So have you ever been to a national convention?
No, I
No.
really
Okay.
wanted to, but I didn't get the chance. So this is my first convention ever.
This is testing the waters a bit, putting your toe in the pool first. So what did you think?
Well, I think I'm gonna dive in.
Ah, nice, nice, nice.
Yes,
And
that's
I
good.
mean, you went, so you come to your first state convention, which is, again, it's a smaller, much more manageable version of what happens on the national level.
Yeah.
But unlike most people who just kind of come and take notes and go back and ponder, you get elected to lead one of the divisions. So talk about diving in. So tell us about that. You're now the president of the guide dog division. How did that come about?
Yes. So in the convention there are many, many meetings, and that day it was the Friday, right? It was the Friday that the guide dog users meeting was. And around the same time there were so many meetings I wanted to go to. There was the blind parents meeting, and there was
Yeah,
the blind students association meeting, and then there was the
right,
guide dog users.
right.
So it was really hard to choose. And I was at the blind parents meeting. I was like, maybe I'm not going to go to the guide dog users meeting. Maybe I'm just going to stay, because they were going to have a panel of kids that would
Mm,
be talking about their experience, having blind parents. So
mm-hmm,
that was very interesting. And it was really hard to leave. And I almost didn't leave.
mm,
Like, forget it. I'm going to go. I'm going to go and see what this whole like guide dog user thing is about, right?
yeah.
So I get there and I meet like other guide dog users that were there, and we were talking about like our experiences, our issues, and so on and so forth. There was a person who was interested in getting a guide dog, and she wanted to hear like different perspectives and all that. So that was really cool because not only like it's very rare to be in the same room with different guide dog users. So it was a really cool experience. And then the president at the time goes, well, we don't really have a board. I'm like, okay. And she's like, is anybody interested in getting more involved? And I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. But I didn't expect it to go to the next level, of like, are you
being president?
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm interested in getting more involved. And I'm like, okay, well, we need a president, we need a vice president, we need this, all the roles in the board. And then she goes, is anybody interested in being the president? And the room was kind of like
crickets, right?
Silent. I was hesitating because usually I don't just like put myself out there.
Yeah.
But then I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm interested. And then we take the vote, and nobody opposed. I suppose I don't suck that much, or just didn't make enemies yet, right? Because nobody knew me. It's like, yeah, I guess we're fine with this person who we don't know anything about.
I think the way it goes is if somebody's willing to do it, everybody else is for it because that means they don't have to do it.
Exactly. So does the division have its full board now of officers?
We did, but unfortunately now we are missing a vice president. So we'll be hopefully, we will try to fill that role within the next year. And we have some plans. I was talking to Lynn. She was so great to just listen to me rambling on and on and on about.
and for people who don't know, Lynn Heights is the president of the Pennsylvania affiliate of the NFB.
Yes.
So how many people, Katia, right now are in the division?
So right now about 5 people. 4. But it wasn't that active before. As I understand it, they only held annual meetings, I think. So we'll be working on maybe getting a little bit more active and doing more projects, hopefully.
And and that's what I kind of wanted to. And you don't have to divulge, things that are still sort of in the making, but in general, do you have some goals or thoughts and ideas that you'd like to share about, what you envision for the division?
Yeah. So, well, everything is in the making, right?
Yeah.
So, in general, what I really hope to see is, like I said, for the division to be more active, for there to be more members, right? And for the division to be a space for guide dog users to come together and discuss the issues that pertain particularly to us service animal users, and how we could, make things better. Because, I mean, let's face it, there is lack of access for the whole blind community, but when you're a service dog user, it's that much harder. It's even, and it's very unfortunate. So, and I'm looking forward to also maybe collaborate with different divisions within the NFB to work on different projects, but I'm not going to say anything about that right now because I don't know where that's going to go. Like I said, everything is in the making.
I'm curious why you prefer a guide dog as opposed to, say, a white cane.
I use a white cane, right? I mean, you have to be able to travel with a white cane efficiently for you to get a guide dog to begin with. Like, if you don't have travel skills, no school is going to give you a guide dog. Right? Because they come, well, some of them, they have you record a video, some of them they come to your home, but they assess how you travel and if you have the necessary travel skills for you to actually be able to work a guide dog, right? But for me personally, one of the reasons why I really like a guide dog is exactly because it's different from a white cane. So for example, when you're using a white cane, you are using the obstacles in your way as your landmarks, right? for you to be able to find your way. So let's say, like, to find the bus stop or whatever, you could use your cane to find the pole, and that's how you're in the right spot, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're using a guide dog, you are not coming in contact with those obstacles, but actually avoiding them.
Mhm.
And I really like that, and I think it saves me a lot of energy, and I don't know, it's just my preference.
Yeah.
So, for example, when we go to places, when I use my white cane, I really hate it because so for example, like I have to use my cane to find like where the door is and stuff, versus I just
Mm-hmm.
tell my dog inside and then we're inside.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's not to say it's easier or harder, right? Because I mean, working a dog is hard and it has its own challenges. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying like using a guide dog is like easy peasy. You just,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm saying. But they are different mobility tools, and you use them differently. So, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes me feel much safer too as a guide dog user. So I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm Muslim and
Mm-hmm.
I wear a headscarf. And sometimes I don't really feel very safe in certain
Mm-hmm.
spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like having, and even as a woman, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
living in the city, sometimes having my dog, even though, she's probably not going to attack anyone, but people don't know that.
I was gonna say, you know what? That's so funny because I was gonna ask, oh, are they also trained to attack? I didn't know
No,
that.
no, they are not. They're not trained to do that. But I mean,
Yeah.
people are just, I think, automatically they're
Yeah.
just kind of
It's a
like stay
barrier.
away.
It's a
Yeah,
barrier. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It would be hard. Or so I feel, right?
So I feel like we need to go back a little bit too. First of all, your guide dog is Ireland.
Yes.
Tell us about the experience of getting her, being paired with her, getting trained to have her as your service dog.
Yeah.
And where you got her
So,
from as well.
yeah. So I got my amazing Ireland from the CNI in Morristown, New Jersey.
Hmm.
It is the first guide dog school in the United States. I'd applied to the CNI, I think the summer that I was going into college.
Okay.
And then in December or maybe January, I don't remember. Anyway, that winter, they came in to do a home visit with me. So we did, they talked to me, they met me, they kind of learned a little bit about what kind of person I am, what kind of personality do I have, what lifestyle do I have, and at that time was a full-time student. And like where did I live and stuff like that. And they observed me using my white cane. They had me cross like small streets and a big street. So they observed me, how I just judged the traffic and stuff like that. And then they did what they call a Juno walk, which is where one of the instructors holds on to one part of the harness. So the part that would be on the dog's like neck, or not neck, chest, they hold on to that, and you hold on to the harness handle. And this is how they judge how um, how fast you need the dog to be walking, how hard of a pole do you need, how well do you follow a dog, right? So can you follow the dog well enough that you can actually work a dog. So all that we did that, and then and then later on, after that, they told me that I was admitted to the school. So because like I said earlier, if you didn't have like the necessary travel skills, or if they didn't feel like you're a good candidate or whatever, not everybody, you don't just apply and then get in automatically, right? So after the home visit, I got admitted to the school, and then I had to wait for a match.
Hmm.
So they had a match for me that summer. I think in July. So it took a year, right? A year from my initial application, they had a match for me. Um, but I couldn't go to that class because we were traveling out of the country. So we were traveling back to Algeria, and my mom had already bought the tickets and everything. So I was really upset. I was really upset because I'm like, well, I really want a guide dog, and I might have to wait a very long time until they find the next match and so on. But I let it go. So I let it go. I told them I couldn't come to this class, and I went about my life. And then 2 months later, in September, the admissions director calls me back and she's like, I think we have a match for you. Will you be able to come in October? And this is not something that they offer to college students usually, because in October, you're in class. If you're a college student, you're in class. You can't really go through the training because it's a really intensive training. But it just so happens that I was taking a semester off. So I was like, yeah, I can come to the October class. So I went to the class, and then I went through the training, and I was paired with Ireland.
What kind of things do they look for when they're pairing you with a service dog?
They look at, for example, like your personality type, right?
Yeah.
Are you like a hyper person? Are you more of like just like a chill person?
Right.
Also your lifestyle, because you're gonna need a different dog for someone who is navigating a college campus every single day, going to classes, or somebody who is like, going to work, or like traveling
Right.
to different states, or versus someone who just needs more of like a chilled dog because they just have like a laid back life, right? You just go, I don't know, to doctor's appointments, or maybe you go to work, but you don't really travel that much. So that's a different dog. They also take into consideration where you live, right? Whether do you live
in the
in the city, outside of the city, all that.
Right.
And obviously your height and weight, that's just like, I guess that's obvious. Also, like I said earlier, the speed that you prefer, and also the pull of the dog. So Ireland is a super fast walker, so super hard puller. And you have to realize, like, your needs might change. So now, I'm going through this kind of transition, I guess, because now with the baby, if I'm pulling the stroller, or if I'm carrying her on a baby carrier, like, it's very hard. Well, it's not hard. It's just like I would rather now have a slower walking dog with a lighter pull, right? But it's very common for first-time users to prefer a hard pull, so you can feel the dog very well, just because you never really worked a dog. But you can always, slow a fast walking dog. Like, I'll just steady, 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 steady. Like, this is the command. But you can't make a slow dog walk faster. So they all have natural, natural like pace, I suppose.
And
the dogs
how
have their
long is the
personalities
training?
too. So that depends on the school, right? And I don't really know much about other schools, but at the CNI, it's a 1 month long training for first time guide dog users. And it's 3 weeks for second time, or, repeat handlers. But you can choose to stay the full month if you wanted, as a second time, third time, whatever handler. You can say, like, I want to stay the full month. They'd
So
let
you actually stay there and work with the dog that whole time?
Yes. So again, that depends on the school. So there are schools that do on-campus training only. There are schools that do both on-campus training and at-home training. And there are schools that are do only at-home training. So the CNI, they do mostly on-campus training. I don't want to give the wrong information. I think they do in-home training, but it's only like case by case thing.
Okay.
So it's not like but so you have your own room, right? Your own private room, with your own private bathroom.
Okay.
And you get the 3 meals of the day, or whatever, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's all there. on the campus. And you don't train like just on the campus, right? That's just like where you stay with the dogs, but you go out. So we go out in Morristown and like train in different routes, and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where I stayed. And
Okay.
when I got there, so the first three days, now they do it, they started doing it differently now, because before, I think before they tell you like what your dog is, like what kind of breed your dog is, and what's your dog's name, etc., etc. But at the time I got there, they changed their policy, so they don't actually tell you that before. So you just get there for the first 3 days. You get like kind of like basic training, kind of lectures type of stuff, like things you shouldn't do with your dog. So for example, like you should never ever let your dog like off leash somewhere that's not like fenced. So they really emphasize that. um you know so stuff like that, like basic things. I guess
Okay.
for a guide dog handler, that you don't really need the dog to be there, for you to learn. And they have these puppet dogs. I don't know what to call them. They're like a dog, but it's like a big dog, but it's like a toy. It's not a
Okay.
statue, but it's, I don't know, I think it's
A
made of
dummy dog.
yeah, a dummy dog. Thank you. So they have these dummy dogs, and you could practice like, putting on the harness and putting on the leash and stuff like that. And for me, I've never even had a dog. Like, not only like I didn't have a guide dog, but I've never even like had a pet dog or anything like that. So I didn't even know like how to like hold the leash, or how to like the different like buckles in the leash, like you to make like a short leash, a long leash, like
Yeah.
so all that you do in the first 3 days, um and then they the fourth day you stay in your room, and the instructor will bring the dogs to you like individually to your room. So it's just going to be you and the dog, right? And yeah, and then I was just like sitting on my bed holding my leash. And the instructor knocks, and I'm like, yeah, you can come in. And they bring in Ireland, and immediately she's like a bowl of energy.
Oh, so it was love at first sight?
I was maybe, I don't know, for her maybe, but for me I was a little bit more anxious. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, gee, this is crazy. She's like, like sniffing me and like sitting on my lap and like pushing me with her head and like jumping and stuff. Like, oh my God. But yeah, it wasn't too long. It wasn't too long before I fell in love with her, because that first day that like you get your dog, you spend the whole the whole day. I was gonna say the whole dog. You spend the whole day just like trying to bond with your dog, just like you and the dog, because at this point they're also like really attached to their trainers, right? The people who train them.
Right.
So for example, when we go outside of the room, when she sees her trainer, she pulls me towards her and she gets a leash correction. But so it's a lot of like bonding
Yeah.
that happens that first day and the first week, and then it's still a
And
lot of
how long have you had her now?
I got her in 2017, so 5 years now. Yeah.
How long does it take for them to train Ireland?
Yeah. So usually, well, and again, I only went to the CNI, so and things are always changing, but usually speaking, so for the CNI specifically, they breed their own dogs, right? So the puppies are born at the CNI at their breeding facilities. And then they go to these families that we call puppy raisers. And that's where, as puppies, they get taught like basic commands like sit, come, down, and they get potty trained and stuff like that. And the school trains these puppy raisers about do's and don'ts. So, they tell them like, oh, you can't let the dog like on furniture, for example, stuff like that. And these puppy raisers, they introduce the dogs to social life, right? So they take them out and introduce them to people, to different environments wherever these puppy raisers go. Like, I don't know, shopping malls or markets or playgrounds or whatever, to socialize the dogs, right? And then I think about 6 to 9 months of age or something, they come back to the CNI to start training as a guide dog. And not everybody passes, right? Not it's very, very difficult. It's a very intense training for the guide dogs. I think it's like the hardest training out of all the service dogs because of the responsibility that they have to take on. It's very, very stressful
Right.
for the dogs. So they come back and they start training at the CNI, and they train up until probably maybe they're like 2 years of age or a year and a half. When I got Ireland, she was a little before 2 years. So I got her in October, and she turns 2 years in November. So
Wow. It's a journey.
yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah.
journey for you and for the dog.
Yes, and that's why it's very insulting when you get denied access because, like, well, I don't want a dog in my car. It's not just
And
a dog,
yeah,
it's not.
that is perfect, Katia, because that's exactly what I wanted to get into are some of those unfortunate experiences. So have you that has personally happened to you? You've been denied a Uber. Have you ever been
Yes.
denied going into an establishment?
Not particularly, but yes, kinda.
Okay.
So yes, I have been denied both Uber and Lyft.
Wow.
And it's very, unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I remember one time it was actually very difficult for me because, because if you get denied and they drive away, there is unfortunately
Mhm.
really nothing you could do. And
Yeah.
especially as a new guide dog user at that point, like, I didn't know to take screenshots of, like,
Right.
the drivers that, like, accepted my request to get
Right.
wait, what is it called? Their number, their thing,
Your license
like,
plate.
yes, thank you, license plate
Mm-hmm.
number. Or like think to record the whole thing, right? You don't really think about
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one time it was really difficult because I was going through a lot of, like, medical problems. And Lisa, you probably know because we
Mm-hmm.
talked about this before. I was
Mm-hmm.
going through a time where it was very, very hard. I was in a lot of physical pain, and it was just a very, very bad period. And I remember I requested an Uber to get picked up from a health center, I think to a different like medical facility.
Mm-hmm.
And the person didn't want to take me. And it was really difficult because now I have to stand here in the cold.
And call
um
another one
I
and
think it
hope that
was
you don't
like
get denied
January.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because you never know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um
So what is it? Do you know what the issue is? The issue the hair? Are they afraid the dog's going to have an accident? What's the
well,
pushback?
it's different for everybody, right? It's different, but a lot of it, I think, comes from a place of ignorance and not
Yeah.
really knowing what kind of training these dogs went through and what they
Yeah.
really mean to the person and what consequences comes from you denying me access to this ride, right? So if I
Yeah.
were to be, for example, 15 minutes now, like, for example, if I go 15 minutes late to my doctor's appointment, they can't see me. I have to reschedule. um
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so that's like a consequence. And if somebody works and they have to take an
Yeah.
Uber because they can't
Exactly.
drive and they constantly are
Exactly.
late because they're denied, they might get fired. Like, these
That's
things
right.
have consequences.
That's right.
But yeah, I think it comes from more of a place of ignorance, and some of them, it could be like cultural reasons,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps religious reasons, or just like
Mm-hmm.
personal preferences. But
Mm-hmm.
all those, I think, they go just under, you know,
Yeah.
just being ignorant.
In your profiles, in your Lyft and Uber profiles, do you have it in there that you have a service dog? And is that even, and what are your thoughts about that? Do you think that would be helpful for a driver, or do you think, well, why do I have to disclose that? Like, what's your opinion on that either way?
Yeah, so no, I don't have it in my profile, and I don't think there's an option for you to put that out there or on the profile. And this is a huge discussion in the guide dog user community.
Okay.
Because I mean, some people say, well, if I'm going to be denied, I might as well know that I'm going to be denied so that I can get someone who doesn't deny me. Right. So some people say, even though it's not in the profile, some people just message the driver and say, just so you know, I'm blind and I have a guide dog. Right. And honestly, I've done that sometimes. I've called the driver and, was like, just so you know, I am blind and I'm traveling with my guide dog. Because if they're going to deny you, then that just saves you time. Right.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like, well, the law doesn't require me to say that. And I shouldn't, I shouldn't have to do that. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you, I have a guide dog, and you shouldn't really have the right to, deny me access. Because if you want to deny me access, then you shouldn't sign that contract in Uber, that tells you that you shouldn't deny, service dog users. And that's a whole other issue. It's because there aren't really real consequences, because when I called Uber and complained, they're like, okay, well, if we get any other complaints, we're going to take action. Like, what do you mean? If you get other complaints, you're going to take action? Like, this is BS.
You're absolutely right about the consequences. I had this conversation with someone who was unfortunately a couple of times denied rides. I think in both instances it was Uber because of her service dog, and it was to get to work. It was to get to work. So it definitely has some consequences.
And there's really no enforcement with any of it. I know my friend was denied in New York, and he took it another step and filed something. I don't know if it was the Department of Justice or the New York Attorney General or one of the advocacy places up there. And they basically said they weren't going to look further into it. It's, sorry for you, but you're out of luck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And at some point it really gets tiring, and you kind of have to pick and choose your fights, because it gets emotionally draining because for you, it's not like they're denying access to the dog, or they're not letting the dog into their vehicle or into the establishment or whatever it could be. Is that they're denying you as a disabled person access, because that dog is not just the dog, like the way they see it, right? That's not how it works. Like, that dog is part of you, and you can't really function without that dog being there. And I really want people to understand that, like, you're not denying access to my dog, you're denying me access.
Exactly. That dog is just as imperative to your travel as someone who uses a wheelchair or a walker. I mean, or
a white cane, right?
Or a white cane. Exactly. And in establishments, one time I was walking into a doctor's office, and the person was like, whoa, where are you going with the dog? I'm like, it's a service dog, and just kept walking and ignored them. So you kind of have to develop that. As a new guide dog user, I didn't really, I don't know, I was a little bit I wouldn't really do that as much. I couldn't just ignore people. I felt like it was impolite or whatever. Like, I had to sit there and explain to them, like, it's a service dog, blah, 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 blah. But now I can't do that. Like, I don't have the energy or time to keep doing that over and over. So if someone, just says, whoa, where are you going? Somewhere like a hospital or wherever, where I know I absolutely have the right to be here, I just ignore them and keep going. And if they come after me, oh, well, so be it, then... Which in most cases they wouldn't, right? Because because they don't want to make a scene or whatever. I think it sounds like the guide dog division has quite a fighter at the helm. I think just hearing your energy and your staunch kind of commitment will be great. I know of at least one person who has is really considering a guide dog, and I'm hope that this will be encouraging to her and any others like her that might be either on the fence about it, considering it, because it is a different way of traveling, but it could also be
Mm-hmm.
a much more rewarding, if that's the right word, because of the exchange you get back from a service dog as opposed to just a white cane.
Yeah, and
There's a little more companionship and all of that.
yeah, that, and it could be, empowering. So, for example,
Yeah.
when I was a white cane user, well, I still am. I guess it's just not like
Right.
exclusive.
Right. Right.
um, but when I use my white cane, for example, I get confused or lost, and like I get really uncomfortable. I get really uncomfortable. But
Hmm.
when I get like confused or lost with my dog, I just start talking to Ireland. I'm like, yeah, I
Hmm.
think we might be lost. I think it could be that way. Even though she does,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
makes it like less awkward. I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
which is like funny. And this is just about a funny thing or like my experience. But versus if I'm using a white cane, like I don't want people to
You
think I'm
can't
crazy.
really.
It's like
Right.
I don't
talking to
think I
myself.
don't think you should start talking
Right.
to your white cane, Katia.
And that's I'm thinking about a couple of times where at Washington seminar one year, and I told this story when we had Pass Salon, none of us knew where the elevators were. She told her
Mhm.
dog, find the elevator.
Oh
And
yeah.
within a
Yep.
couple of minutes, we were on the elevator going to wherever we
Yeah.
needed to.
Yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
also then think about at the new Penn Station in New York, I could find any place, I could get to any place in New York City, but once I got off the train, I couldn't get out of the I couldn't get out of
Yeah.
the
The
station.
maze
And if you had a
Hmm.
dog, you'd tell the dog to find the door or find
outside.
the
Yeah.
exit, and boom, you're out.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
what you
So
say? Just outside? Okay, that's great.
But yeah, I mean, for the C9, yeah, that's what we say
Hmm.
outside. And
Outside.
you can always teach them new things, right? It's amazing what these dogs can learn.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You can teach them anything, you want.
What
But
what's like the general lifespan of one service dog? Because they do have to retire after a while,
oh,
correct?
so
Or
you mean
no?
like they're working
They're
but
working part. Yeah.
um well, it depends. So probably like 5 to 9 years
Okay.
of age, not of working.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um so 4 to 6 years of actually working. So
Okay.
it depends. It depends.
Yeah.
And some of them go less, some of them go more, and depends if they have health issues. Depends. Some of them just don't want to work anymore. A lot of people think
Mm.
we force these dogs to work. We don't. They
Mm-hmm.
want to
Mm-hmm.
work. And some of
Mm-hmm.
them just quit. They're like, I don't want to work anymore. I just want to enjoy my
Mm-hmm.
life. Thank you.
Well, that's interesting. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I've talked to some people. Talking to someone like a year ago or something, and she was telling me about her previous dog. They got out of the house, and he just like stopped in his tracks and just didn't want to move
Oh
forward.
my
And
gosh.
there was nothing like wrong with him or anything. And she'd go forward, and he would just like go in a circle and go forward, go in a
Oh my
circle. And I'm like, I don't
goodness.
want to work anymore. Yeah, and they give you different cues. Some of them just don't want to go. Like if you're going out and you're grabbing the harness, they don't want to go
Mm-hmm.
in the harness anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, or they like turn away from the harness. Like they give you different
Oh
different cues.
wow.
Some of them have, like I said, health issues, and some of them start slowing down, but they still want to work, but you shouldn't be working them because
Right.
they're
Right.
just getting old. And some
Right.
of them, some you're just like in a transition and you need a different dog, and you might have to retire that dog
Mm.
earlier. Or
Yeah.
also they might have like trauma or something. So I'm in this Facebook group, and like a lot of people post about like their guide dogs and what they're going through and stuff. And this we talk about this a lot too, and this is a growing issue right now, is people bringing their so-called therapy dogs to everywhere. And so if your dog is, for example, attacked by another dog, a pet or whatever, any other dog, then they start developing anxiety, and they might they might themselves start like barking at other dogs and stuff, and that's unacceptable behavior for a guide dog, even though you know where it's coming from, right? So then you might have to retire that dog for a behavioral issue like that, or another behavioral issue that, you know, is not acceptable for a guide dog, that could be developed over time or whatnot. So
Hmm.
yeah.
And what happens when the dog retires? Do you have the option of keeping her, or depending on if you get another dog, how does that all work out?
It depends on the school. So some schools, so for the CNI, you have ownership of the dog since day one, like
Okay.
day one of graduation. So if you graduated from the CNI and that dog graduated with you, you know, you own that dog. So once that dog graduates, you can absolutely keep that dog because it's your dog, right? You could, you could have that dog live with a family member or a friend that you trust. If you're getting another dog and you couldn't take care of two dogs, or you didn't think it's a good idea or whatever, because it could be hard, for the old and new dog and stuff, emotionally speaking. Or you could contact the school, like the CNI. You could contact the CNI and say, I would like your help to, place my dog in a good home. And so they would start contacting people, starting with the puppy raisers, and other people in their circle, in their network or community that they built over time. They'd contact people who they know for sure, would be taking care of your dog, and they could place it that way. Now, for other schools, um, there are other schools where you don't own the dog at all. So when you graduate, you sign a contract with the school. So when the dog retires, that dog goes back to the school. And I don't really know if they like some of them, because some of them they get placed in other areas of service, right? So they could retrain the dog if the dog was young enough. They could retrain the dog and put them to other lines of work, and that happens with dogs that don't graduate also. Sometimes they so you could become, I don't know, like a diabetic alert dog. And then there are some schools where you get ownership of the dog after a certain amount of time that you had with the dog. So let's say, I know, leader dogs, this is another school, leader dogs, for example, you get ownership of the dog after 1 year. I think there's another school, one of the schools in New York, I think you get ownership after 3 years or something. And these policies are always changing, right? But I think the CNI is the only one where you get ownership of the dog from the get-go. You don't sign any contracts or anything like that. This is one of the things that people consider when you have to consider which school, you are getting your dog from.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
for the schools, for example, like for the schools that you don't own the dog, it's their dog, it's the school's dog. So sometimes they help out with like medical expenses, for example, or like food expenses or things like that. But if it's your dog, then you're responsible for all that. Yeah, but it's I guess it has positives and negatives, and you have to kind of weigh them, because then if it's your dog, they can't just come and take it, right? Because it's your dog. And they have no say in anything. Versus if it's the school's dog, well, it's the school's dog. So I don't know if you guys saw this, but I think a couple years back there was this video on Facebook that somebody was telling me about, and apparently this woman is a guide dog user, and she was outside with her guide dog, and somebody from her guide dog school just showed up, and they wanted to take the dog away. And this, I can't even remember what school, because it's a school I've never heard of, like some school in Florida. I don't even recall. But they were sued at some point because they found out that they were taking the dogs back from handlers, and and selling them. They could do that because they could just say, well, there's a contract and we could
Right.
we could take the dog.
Have you ever traveled with Ireland?
Yes. So within the states, we traveled to Florida, we
Okay.
traveled to South Dakota a few times, we traveled to Chicago, we went to
Okay.
Texas in 2019, right before COVID. We
Uh-huh.
flew to France and we took the train to Switzerland. So she's really good at that.
And no problems
No problems with her.
with
But
the airlines or anything like that.
yeah, so before there was like nothing you really had to do. I mean, when I traveled to France, I had to fill out like vet paperwork and stuff, but that's just for any animal, right?
Mhm.
And with the airlines, I just call them and say I'm traveling with a guide dog. Please make sure, like, is there any way you make sure that you reserve me a seat with more space
Mhm.
in advance so that I don't have to deal with it when I get to the airport,
Right.
right? And so we do that. But now, and I have traveled with her to Arkansas after the new Department of Transportation law thing. Now you have to fill out, this form and stuff like that. And apparently, if if an airline airline officer or like the airline people or whatever, if they decided like your dog is disturbing or whatever, they could take it away. Like they could ask you to put it in cargo or ask you to leave. And that makes sense, but it's kind of like it makes me stressed out. It makes me stressed out because I'm like, well, and about the forms, like, I mean, yeah, it's a whole thing. Like, why do I have to
Mhm.
fill out a form for you to deal with a problem that I'm not even part of, right? Because
Mhm.
they say, well, we did this to make sure that people are not, bringing fake service animals. Well, people could
Mhm.
still bring in fake service animals. Like, they could fill out that form and, like, it's not that difficult.
There was something recently in the news about a Canadian lady who had traveled from Minnesota to Toronto, had no issues getting on the plane in Minneapolis, but then coming back when she was trying to return back to her home in Minnesota, she had trouble in Toronto. Hey, did you fill out? And it seems like each airline has different things you have to
Yes,
fill out.
exactly. And that's the problem, right? It's not like the form is universal. So like the stuff you have to fill out in the form, like the information you have to put in the form, that's universal. But every airline does it differently. And that's really annoying because
Right.
you never know what to expect and you never know like how accessible it is and like
Mhm.
all this stuff. And even before the form, there was also a discussion about whether service dog users could do pre-check-in, right? Or whether you had to check in, in person. And there was a lot of advocacy that was done. And eventually, that they said that, yeah, like you could do pre-checking because it doesn't make any sense. But again, like the fact that like anyone would like suggest these kinds of like policies, it's, I don't know, it's kind of disturbing, and it puts a lot of like burden on the disabled community, on disabled people who choose to use service animals, right?
This lady ended up spending, I think she said she spent about $2,000 because they denied her access to the plane, and she ended up having to take a train into the, to the border, to the U.S. Canadian border, and then from when she got into the U.S., I don't remember if she took another flight from wherever she was near, and I want to say Detroit, back to Minneapolis, but it ended up costing her a couple $1,000.
Wow, that's crazy. I did not see this story on the news.
I'll put a link in the show notes. All the different things that folks go through. And like you were saying earlier, it is something that it's not the dog who is paying the price for the denial. It's the person, it's the disabled person who is the one who is feeling it. And
Yeah.
the dog doesn't care if he flies or not. The dog just wants to go where you're going and take you where you want to go.
Going back to like the why people deny access thing, Lisa, I've been like in Uber sometimes where the driver goes, "Oh my God, your dog is so well behaved. I've had a dog before in this car and they were like jumping everywhere." I'm like, that's probably not
Yeah.
a real service dog because that's not
Yeah.
how they should be behaving. So, I mean, like, I want to say it's like the driver's fault for all these like denials and stuff, and that, it's
Mm-hmm.
Uber for like not having consequences, but also people have to realize that when they decide to take their pet dog who was never trained
Mm-hmm.
and try to pass it as a service dog, like, yeah, maybe you will get that ride. Yeah, maybe you will be allowed to like take that dog in the plane for that day or in the store or whatever. But the consequences that come out of that, out of the way your dog behaves and out of the way like people see you, work with your dog and stuff like that, well, quote unquote work, um it has consequences on the people who are actually using real service dogs.
Yeah.
Just like that
Yeah.
Uber driver, he was like, "I almost didn't take you." He actually
Oh
outright
my
said,
gosh.
coming from the airport, he was like, I saw the dog and I almost didn't take you, but then I was like, whatever. And
Yeah.
this is why. He was like, "I had a dog here before," and he was like jumping everywhere and stuff.
Well, like I said, I think the division is very, very in very good hands,
I hope so.
because you sound like you're a fighter, and hopefully you will get the support you need, within the division, and even outside of even the NFB world, the guide dog users everywhere.
Yeah.
Hopefully, will from anywhere and everywhere come and support you.
Yeah,
Um,
and maybe David could put my email in the description. And if you are a guide dog user in Pennsylvania or anywhere, or if you're considering to get a guide dog,
mhm,
please
mhm.
get in touch.
Hey, why don't you give
Yes.
us that email address? What is that?
khadjeb@widener.edu, and it's spelled KHADJEB at Widener, WIDENER.edu.
And we will add that so you can just tap and get in touch with Katia so you can ask her any kind of questions you have as far as your guide dogs go, and
Or
get in
join
touch
the
with her.
division, right?
Or join, there you go. Or jump in there. Even if you're not in a current chapter, you could always just join the guide dog users and become part of the federation that way.
Yes.
Is the division meeting other than annually? Are you having in
Oh, yes.
between
So
virtual monthly meetings or something?
we will be changing that, but we are working on that. So we're hoping to do
Okay.
monthly meetings, but I'm still working with Lynn and Emily and Stacy to do the
Okay.
whole scheduling and stuff.
Good for you taking this on. Good for you for diving in, as you said.
Yeah, I hope I don't hit my head on the bottom of the pool.
No,
You made sure
no.
there was water in there, right?
Yeah, right. Katia, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you taking the time out. It was lovely talking to you. We're so looking forward to what you're bringing to the division and what you're bringing to the chapter. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you. I was happy to be here, and it was a pleasure talking to both of you.
Thanks again to Katia for stopping by and giving us all the great information about the guide dog users. And we'll have all her information contact-wise so you can reach out to her if you've got questions about having a guide dog or getting a guide dog, or more importantly, if you want to join the guide dog users. And that would be a great thing for you to do. If you've got a dog now, reach out to Katia if you are thinking about getting a dog, if you have any questions. It was nice talking to her, Lisa.
It really was. And I do hope people, like you just said, take advantage of her availability. She's very eager to share more about her experience, how much freeing, I think, is maybe one of the words she used, to have a service dog. So, feel free to reach out to her. She's very willing and able to talk.
And while you're thinking about reaching out, please reach out to us. We've got a phone number you can call, 267-338-4495. You've got up to 3 minutes. Please call us with questions, comments, show ideas, reviews, ratings, maybe tips on how you do things around your house or how you do things when you're out and about that may help other blind folks like it helped you out. Again, 267-338-4495. Again, 3 minutes, leave your name and town if you do leave a message.
And if you prefer no limits on email, that could be as long as you like. Our email address is whitecanesconnect@gmail.com.
Lisa, this is going to wrap 2022 for White Canes Connect. This is our final episode of the year. So I hope you'll come back next year and listen to more episodes that we bring. And Lisa and everyone listening, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope it's a great new year ahead for all of us.
Happy holidays, everybody. And thank you for your support all through the year.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.